Greetings, students. We're going to discuss practice test or practice quiz number 3 today. So first question, solve each equation by factoring. We're going to get everything on the left side for all 4 of these equations. So subtract the 2n and subtract the 48 over to the n squared. So this is going to be n squared minus 2n minus 48 equals nothing. Now because the value of a here is nothing, or excuse me, is 1, we can factor with the short factor variety. So we have here a value of b, or a value of a times c of negative 48, and a value of b of negative 2. So breaking down the 48 to make negative 2, we're going to use negative 8 and positive 6. And because a is 1, we don't have to do any extra work here. In other words, we don't have to do any division. We can have here n minus 8 times n plus 6 is equal to nothing. So my values for n are 8 and negative 6, because you said each one is separately equal to 0. So n is equal to positive 8 because 8 minus 8 is nothing, and n is equal to negative 6 because negative 6 plus 6 is nothing. You can check your work very easily by substituting the values in for n and verifying that n is in fact a solution to the equation. So if we plug in 8 for n here, 8 squared is 64. And if we plug in 8 for n here, 48 plus 16 is also 64. So we verified our solution. Question 2, take away the 11r from the left to the right. It does say solve by factoring, so these will be factorable, these first 4. So you do not have to use the quadratic formula here to solve any of these 4 questions. So n squared minus 11, or n squared minus 11, excuse me, r squared minus 11r plus 28 equals nothing. So we're going to factor here the 28 to make negative 11, using a negative 7 and a negative 4. So that's r minus 7 times r minus 4. So our answers are positive 7 and positive 4. So r is 7 and r is 4. And again, I can verify my work the same way I did on the last question. I'm not going to take my time and put the numbers in because I know those are the right answers. But on the test, you may want to do that. All right, question 3. Same deal, move the 5x squared and the 7x over. So 5 from 6x squared is x squared, 1x squared. 7 from 9x is 2x, minus 24 is equal to nothing now. So I'm breaking down the negative 24 to make a 2, using, in this case, negative 6, positive 6, not negative 6, and negative 4, positive 6, negative 4. So this will be x minus 6 times the quantity x plus 6 times the quantity x minus 4 equals nothing. Plus 6 because I want positive 2 when I subtract here. So my answers are negative 6 and positive 4 for my solution set. And I can verify my work by plugging that back in for x on the original question. And one final one here, taking the 2x over to the x squared plus 1. X squared minus 2x plus 1 equals nothing. This is a difference of squares. So that has only actually one solution because it's x minus 1 times x minus 1. In other words, breaking down the 1 to make a negative 2 has to be negative 1 times negative 1. So x here is in fact only one number, negative 1. There's no second number. And you can verify your work here and make sure it ends up working out positive 1, not negative 1. Sorry. We always want the opposite. So if you put in 1 for x, you get 1 plus 1 is 2, and then 2 times 1 is also 2. All right, next two items, these are supposed to be the quadratic formula. So on the first one, I've got everything on the left ready for you to go. On the second one, you actually have to do a little bit of work, put everything on the left. Make sure you identify either identify A, B, and C to show your work here, or you show out the formula. So I'll do both. You don't have to do both. It just says find the zeros around the nearest hundredth. So if you just want to do one or the other, that's fine. So x is equal to opposite b, which is negative 12, or opposite of 12, negative 12, plus and minus the square root of b squared, 12 squared, minus 4 times a times c, 4 times negative 91, all divided by 2a, 2 times 4. Now, if those had a common factor, I could have divided by that common factor, but I'm looking at the numbers here, 4, 12, and 91. 91 doesn't really have any common factors with anything but 7. Well, 7 and 3. So I'm doubtful that this has any common factors at the start of the question. And I know it doesn't, but you should be doubtful as well if they have common factors. Anyway, so negative 12. Let's do the plus root first. Plus the square root of 12 squared minus 4 times 4 times 91. And I should verify that I typed everything in right when I go through this. So I'm only going to type it in once. Negative 12 plus the square root of 12 squared minus 4 times 91. Yeah. And it gives me a domain error because I didn't put a negative in front of the 91, of course. So like I said, verify you're typing everything in right when you do this. I do have them solvable. So that's 28. And I'm going to divide it by 8. 2 times 4. So look at that, ended up being an integer value, the multiplication. So that's 3.5, the first solution. I can't guarantee that there's going to be nice numbers on the test. Just round to the hundredths if they're not. And then the second answer, I'll push this arrow key to go back up and change that plus sign into a minus sign. Again, you have to start learning to use calculators here. The arrow key on the big calculator does the same thing. If you have the bigger one, the 84s. Subtracting negative 52 and then dividing by 8. Negative 6.5. If you want to take the time to verify your answers are correct, you can put them back in for x. It will take you a while. This next one looks like it might be factorable, but I did say find the zeros and round to the nearest hundredth. So there's a good chance it's not factorable. If I did move everything over to the left, you would see p squared plus 4p minus 21. That is in fact factorable because 7 and 3, positive 7 and negative 3 would make positive 4. So I don't really care if you don't use the quadratic formula here. So if you'd prefer just to do factoring, if I have a question here that factors, you can do factoring. Positive 7, negative 3. That's going to make positive 4, and it's going to yield your answers of negative 7 and positive 3. If you'd rather use the quadratic formula, that's fine as well. Because again, I'm not guaranteeing these ones are factorable. In fact, they're most likely not going to be factorable because it's quadratic formula work. It's supposed to be quadratic formula work, in other words. So x is equal to the opposite of b, negative 4 plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4. So minus 4 times 1 times negative 21 divided by 2 times 1. There's the formula. And we would have on the calculator here, when we type it in, negative 4, we'll do the plus root first, plus the square root of 4 parenthesis 1 parenthesis negative 21. This should be an integer value. And again, I've typed it in wrong here. And this one, it's right here where I've done a mistake. I didn't do the 4 squared. So yeah, I'm kind of doing this on purpose just to show you that if you get something in the calculator that says error or something, most likely you just type something in wrong. You just gotta go back through your work and make sure it's typed in right. So that's 6 divided by 2, that's my 3, positive 3. And then from a minus root, take a minus, negative 14 divided by 2, that's my negative 7. Again, it is possible to use the quadratic formula here if you don't, if it's non-factorable. And the same applies actually to the first 4. If you'd prefer using quadratic formula on all of them, I don't really mind that much on the first 6 questions. Even though the first 4 will be factorable, and it's much easier to factor than it is quadratic formula. Anyways, next item, solve by taking square roots. What this means is to get the squared by itself because there's only a squared, and there's no x term. So add the 10 to the 26, 4k squared equals 36. Divide by 4, k squared is equal to 36, and then square root. You will get 2 answers, positive and negative 6. You can write them both together like that, plus minus 6, or you can write them separately. K equals 6, k equals negative 6. You can verify your work, putting it back in for k. 6 squared is going to be 36 times by 4 minus 10. Sorry, 9. This is why I verify my work on this first time around. And 3. When I divided by 4, I should have gotten 9 from the 36. And then you can verify your work. 3 squared is 9. 4 times 9 is 36. Minus 10 is 26. Same deal here. 3x squared is equal to 225. Okay, take the 1 from the 225. 225 divided by 3, 75. So x squared is 75. And then I can square root that to get my answer. Now, it doesn't say whether to give a decimal or a root answer, so I will take the exact root, plus and minus the square root of 75, which is actually reducible. I wouldn't take off for the reduction here, though. So I'll take that answer, or I'll take the decimal approximate 8.66, approximately positive and negative 8.66, or 8 6600ths. Either answer is fine. Either answer. And if you want to reduce the root, that's good too. On reduction of the root. All right, find the value to complete the square. I did fix this on the quiz, so it looks a little bit different. So on your practice quiz, this should actually look like just have a blank spot next to the 10. So it should just say a squared minus 10a. So on my version here, I didn't fix it yet because I used the printed version. But on your version that you have, it doesn't have any of these two numbers. It doesn't have either of those two numbers. It just has that. What I'm asking for is what you need to add to this to complete the square. So you take half of the middle term squared. Negative 10 divided by 2 squared is 25. That's what needs to be added to make this a perfect square. And it would be a minus 5 squared, perfect square here. Same deal here on this one. I took off these last two numbers because they're not important in the problem. I'm not asking you to solve the problem here. I'm just asking you to complete the square. So on your version, it just has the p squared minus 6p. And the same thing on the quiz. It'll have the same thing on the quiz too. It'll just have a something squared minus or plus a number. So half of negative 6 is 3. 3 squared is 9. Anyways, that's what you're doing on those two questions. You're not doing any work to solve it. You're just writing it. You're just figuring out what number to add, what number needs to be added to the question. All right, to do vertex form, we complete the square. And we basically just complete the square. That's all I'm asking you to do. Do the completed square value of the question. So like on this question here, number 11, what I'm asking you to do here is to do the work for completing the square, but not actually solve the question all the way out. So all I'm asking you to do here is do a squared minus 10a, put the 36 over, or 33 over with the 6. Sorry. Is equal to 39. Then figure out what to add to both sides. And after you've added the same thing to both sides, so in this case, it's going to be 25 that I add to both sides. After you've added what you need to add to both sides, then factor the left and combine the right side of the equation. So this will be a minus 5 squared is equal to, the quantity a minus 5 squared is equal to 39 plus 25, which is 64. You don't have to finish solving it. If you want to square root and finish solving it, that's fine as well. But on this one, I'm just asking you to write it in the vertex form. So that's what we called vertex form. When it was supposed to actually be equal to y. So I didn't have it equal to y, but that's what we actually called vertex form when it was equal to y last year. And I just wanted you to do the first part of completing the square there. Just the first part, not the finished answer part. If that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, come in and ask about it. All right. For the next one, same deal. Add the 51 over. M squared minus 6m is equal to 55. Then add 9 to both sides. M squared, because half of 6 squared is 9, minus 6m plus 9 is equal to 55 plus 9, which is 64. And then I can rewrite this as m minus 3 squared is equal to 64. And again, you can go through and solve it the rest of the way by square rooting both sides. but I'm not asking for that step on these two questions. I'm just asking you to do the first two steps. And then for the last two here of this concept, I am asking you to do the whole work. So for number 13 and 14, for those two, I am asking you to go through it and to finish it out and give me solutions. Square root it and give me solutions, in other words. So here I'm going to take half of 20 squared, which is 100. R squared minus 20r plus 100 is equal to negative 77 plus 100. So I'm adding 100 to both sides. So this is r minus 10 squared is equal to negative 77 plus 100 is 23. Then I have to square root both sides. R minus 10 is equal to the positive and negative square root of 23. And you can leave your answer in exact form, or you can type it in the calculator. I don't care which form you give me. So R is equal to 10 plus and minus the square is 23. There's the exact answer. And then typing it in the calculator, you can get the decimal approximate. 10 plus the square root of 23. 14 and 79 hundredths. And then 10 minus the square root of 23 would be 5 and 2 hundredths. So those would be the two decimal approximate answers that you could also give instead of the exact answer. All right, here number 14 is the hardest one on the front. So you're going to take a decimal, you're going to take a fractional number here. Half of 15 squared is what's going to add to both sides. 15 divided by 2, 7.5 squared, 56.25. So n squared minus 15n plus 56.25 is equal to negative 14 plus 56 and 25 hundredths. So this here on the left is going to be n minus 7.5 squared, because half of 15 is 7.5. And now I got to do 56.25 minus 14. 56 1/4 minus 14. 42 1/4. 42.25. And then I'm going to do the same thing as I did over here. And minus 7.5 is equal to the square root, positive and negative square root of 42.5. 42 1/4, sorry. And then I'll have my answers. 7.5 plus and minus the square root of 42 1/4. Again, the decimal approximate is also acceptable here, if you prefer not to give the exact answer. If you prefer not to mix the decimals with the roots. It is possible to check your work here by finding the value that this works out to and putting it back in for n. So it might be useful on this longest one just to spend a little bit of extra time. 7.5 plus the square root of 42.25 gives me the number. Oh, that is a nice number. That is 14. That is actually a super nice number. And so we're saying here that 14 actually works for n. And this is actually 14 because this is factorable, which is kind of awesome to see, since I said to complete the square here. So 14 squared minus 15 times 14 plus 14. And it's going to end up being 0, like it should be. So that is pretty cool. It ended up actually as a nice numbers there. I won't take off, though, if you don't plug it back in the calculator, like I just did there. Anyways, that's the first page. Second page. Question 14 is the easier question here. This is our distance equals rate times time question. Sorry, I'm going to tape this side down because this side is going to be a little bit longer to work on some of the questions, and I don't want to have to struggle holding down the paper. So Jennifer left home. D equals RT. This is rate times time. Average speed of 30. So one of my rates is going to be 30 kilometers an hour. Sometime later, Angeli left driving in the same direction, but an average speed of 45. So that's another formula altogether there. So I have 45 as that rate. So far I've got two rates, 45 and 30. After driving for 2 hours, Angeli, this is how long she drove, caught up with Jennifer. So Angeli drove for 2 hours. So this is Angeli's distance. She drove for 90 kilometers. 45 times 2 hours. How long did Jennifer drive? So now I'm going to take this 90 kilometers and say, well, that's going to be how far Jennifer drove. How much time did she use? Well, she used 3 hours. D is equal to RT. All right, next question. This is our quadratic one. So the dolphin jumps out of the water. The quadratic function is negative 16t squared plus 20t. Models the dolphin's height above the water after t seconds. How long is the dolphin out of the water? What I'm asking you to do here is to solve this. So he's at the water, which is a height of 0, at a time of 0, and then there's another time where he's also at the water, or she, if it's a girl dolphin, could be a boy or a girl dolphin. So this is the equation I'm asking you to solve. I'm asking you to solve this for t. So you could factor this by pulling a t and a 4 out in the front, and then solve for t that way, which is what I'm going to do. You can also use the quadratic formula. So 4t, I'll pull it in front. I'll pull a negative 4t in the front, and it's going to be 4t minus 5. So this first one yields 0. Negative 4t is equal to 0, because at time equals 0, that's when the dolphin starts the jump. So that's when the dolphin starts at the water. And the other one's going to be my actual answer. 4t minus 5 equals nothing, because that's going to be the other end, the other x-intercept. In other words, when it's on the axis again. And that's going to be time is equal to 5/4 of a second. And you can write that as decimal, since most times people don't say 5/4 of a second, they say 1.25 seconds. That would be fine to write it that way too. All right, the equations shouldn't be that big of a deal solving the equations. Distribute, combine like terms. It should be one of the answers below. If you don't get one of the answers below, then you're doing something wrong. So this should be 10 plus 110a. And if I was observant here, I'd notice they both have a 10 in the front. I could divide both sides by 10, but I wasn't very observant to start the question. So we're just going to go through the work. And this is going to be 10a minus 10. And I look here. It'd be nice if these 10s were canceling out, and it does look like they actually do. Negative 10, negative 10 when I add it over. Well, that makes nothing. 110a is equal to 10a. Well, a has to be nothing then. 100a equals 0. A is nothing. I can verify my work pretty easily. So this is going to be 1. Negative 10 times 1. And this is going to be 1 as well. Because 11 times a is 0. 1. Negative 10 times 1. Yeah. X is 0 or a is 0 in this case. Okay, next item. This has an x in the bottom. The rest of these have an x and an x minus 5, because that's how x squared minus 5x factors. X squared minus 5x is x times x minus 5. That's what x squared minus 5x is. It's got x and x minus 5. So I'm going to take both sides of the equation, cross that out so it doesn't confuse you. And I'm going to take them in times by x squared, x times x minus 5. That's going to cancel out this term. I shouldn't say term, the denominator. This denominator, and then these x's are going to reduce, leaving me with just the x minus 5 times by the 3 here. That's just going to times by the 3, not by the 1 or the 5. So I'm going to have 1 minus 3 times x is 3x, and then negative 3 times negative 5 is positive 15. All right, combining this together, that's 16. Negative 3x plus 16 is equal to 5. That's subtracting it over. Negative 3x is equal to negative 11, and then dividing, I get 11/3. If I'd like to verify my work, I'm going to have to type that back into x, and I'm going to have to make sure that it works out evenly. I'll check it on the answer key here, make sure I do. So if you want to check your work there, it might be a little difficult. It might be a little bit of extra time to check your work. And then for the last 3, once again, I'm not looking for the actual graphs. I'm just looking for a table of values. So just find me the table of values between -2 and +2. -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. This is what I will check, the y values here. I'm just asking you to plug things in for x and evaluate what comes out for y. So x and then y. I'm not even going to focus on the intercepts here at all, since I just want to make sure you can type things in for x. When we get to the graphs, we'll actually do the graphs properly. For these 2 questions, I just want you to type things into the table, put things into a table, find the outputs. For absolute value, again, that's always positive when it comes out. So this will be a positive number when it comes out of this absolute value. So even this will be 6 plus 2, that's 8 times 3, 24, plus 4 would be 28. And when we get to the positive here, -6 plus 2 is -2, but its absolute value is +2. So 3 times 2 plus 4, 6 plus 4 is 10. So that should be +10. The calculator, the little ones do not have an absolute value key for you to use, so you just have to make sure you make it positive when you work it out. Just make sure you use a positive value, not a negative value. Anyways, I'll be here today after school, and we'll be here tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning, to give you a hand. I usually get here in the morning about. If you want to come by about 7:15 to do a little studying, 7:20 tomorrow morning, I'll be happy to study with you a little bit for this quiz on Tuesday. Good luck.